Okay, cast iron Powerglide torque converter. If your converter has not been marked before, normally most of these should have been marked by somebody, because I guarantee they've been taken apart. But mark it somewhere so that you know where to line it up. So this one's been marked here and here. So I'll just use those marks. 1/2 inch on the bolts that hold this together. Okay, it's probably not going to separate very easily. Try not to scar the surfaces.
What's going on with that red board of F-150 over there?
I'll pull it out. Torque converter's bad.
Gotta pull that out. All right. Pull that out.
Okay, it's definitely not wanting to separate easily. Okay, make sure your bushing is okay. Make sure your thrust washer surface is okay. You have an O-ring here to seal it. And me personally, I go ahead and put a thin bead of silicone on there also to make damn sure that thing ain't gonna leak. Good grade of silicone. Thrust washer, our cover, and make sure that these fins are not loose and they're not coming apart on both areas in here. Check your splines and your surface for your sprag in here. And check your sprag operation, and it is turning counterclockwise, locking clockwise. And remember which direction this was facing. We have this side facing up. Another thrust washer here. Make sure it's in good shape. Going to do the same thing with these fins in here. Make sure they're in good shape, not bent, not coming loose. And then you're going to check the surface of your hub right here. Make sure there's no cracks in the corners here. This is not all beat up. There's no grooves on here. Alright, I'll get this all cleaned up and then we'll go through checking everything on this thing. Okay, this is what this looks like taken apart. I'm going to go ahead and put this piece in from the front. I guess I'm going to have to put my race in there. Go ahead and put my snap ring in, put the opening away from an opening. Make sure you have this facing the right way. And we'll put that in from the other side since our race is not in there. This is going to face that way. And our race is going to go in this way. Little angles facing that way. Have to line our notches up with the spots on the stator right there. And one of them is special, so it only goes in one way. One's smaller than the others. And it looks like you cannot put it in upside down. So it goes this way, and I had it backwards. And we'll be able to verify all this once we get it together, because it won't turn the right direction if we don't. Okay. Then they want you to put a special tool in here. You don't really need a special tool. It seems to be the same on both sides. You can just go ahead and put your race in. Your springs do need to face a certain direction. You want the open end facing out, this kind of curved end facing to the inside. So this is going to sit back against here. And these springs are actually a little worn. I would put a new sprag in here if I was rebuilding this thing. So you just want to pay attention to how your springs were. I don't know how well it's showing up. This is how it's going to sit in there. And you can just put this in there like that. You do not need a special tool. turning clockwise, locking counterclockwise. That is correct. I have this piece here, sits on top, and we put our snap ring in. I need to get a picture of this though.
Favor. Oh. And we did it in the 340 because we were fucking short, shy because of the fucking Cadillac. I'm just gonna give everyone 50. If not, if you want me to buy you lunch for the week, I'll buy you lunch. I'm just gonna, you want cash or you want lunch?
I got my lunch all week this week.
I got you with cash in, brother. Thank you for the work. Appreciate it.
Snap ring in. You can see that there is stamped on this the word front. That's going to face towards the front of the transmission, obviously. So we have our thrust washer here. I would coat that with assembly grease just to put it together. I'm not going to be putting this in a vehicle, so I'm just going to leave it like it is. Goes together like so. Like I said, make sure your pins are okay. Our cover goes on the front. Thrust washer goes on here. Let's see how thick this one is. I'm sure they're all the same, but you know, you do need to check for wear. This one's 117 thousandths. Okay, you need to find your lineup marks that you made. Line your converter back up. We have our O-ring that goes on here. I'm not going to take this off because it will not fit again properly. Okay, there's my marks there. There's my marks right there. Okay, these are kind of T-shaped. The flat edge is going to go up against the inside here. Self-locking nuts. Alright, that nut right there is a little on the loose side. It's not really holding anymore, so it'd need to be replaced. And if you're going to change these out to a different style, you need to change all of them out because it's going to change the weight of the converter. So whatever you do, you got to do it all the way around. Okay, these pump bolts or converter bolts need to be tightened 20 to 25 foot-pounds, and do it just like you do anything else that you're tightening down. Do it in a cross pattern. Kind of pull it down evenly, and then torque them to specs. Like I said, I would use a very, very thin film, and I mean super thin, some really good grade silicone. I use ultra black. You can use the you can actually use this stuff if you want to. Permatex gasket maker. Just something to make sure that damn thing is not going to leak for sure. You don't have to pull it all the way back out because that stupid thing is leaking. That'll take care of any imperfections you may have in there that would let it leak. And just continue on with that until you get it all the way down flush and everything's torqued to specs. Alright, we'll move on to the unit. Okay, in the back of the case here is this relief valve. It goes right up in here. Three-quarter inch socket will get that. Okay, when you get your sealing rings, get your new rings and put them down into the bore of the servos. And you're going to want to check the gap of your rings. You are allowed 5 to 10 thousandths gap between there. Okay, put your rear servo in. You can use a piston spring compressor to compress that sealing ring. Put it in. Up and down, hopefully that's showing up this way. Get your band, get this assembly on here, get this assembly on here. Yeah, and get a zip tie and zip tie this together. So that it stays in there. When I get that, I'll be back. Okay, hopefully this is going to hold this in there good enough. At least till I can get it down in there. There's really no good way to grab this thing. Alright, hopefully that's going to hold that. Get up around that pin, keep some tension on that thing. And it did not work very well. Okay, that ain't working worth the crap. Alright, so we'll try this. We'll get the piston in there with the groove facing up. That shows up a little bit. Get our strut on there. Get our band down in there on there. Now if we can get our strut Boy, I'd like to meet the engineer that came up with this. Kick him right in the balls. Probably is a simple trick to this. If you did these all the time, you'd figure out a way. To make it work. Almost. So close and yet so far. There we go. Alright. The way I got it on there is push the lever all the way, kind of pushing the piston in, pushing the lever back, and then just kind of work it in there. We have thrust washer on the back here. Set our drum in. Alright, gonna put our band strut on, our anchor adjustment pin in, and make sure that everything does not fall apart. I'm gonna have to move that up a little bit to get to that. Get that to line up. Trying to get this where the camera somewhat can see. I can't see a damn thing. I think that's lined up right there. Pretty damn close. Right there. Alright. Put our adjustment in so all this doesn't fall apart. Alright, we want this to still turn. There we go. Make sure everything's looking good. And it looks like we're all lined up. Okay, how to do this. Okay, our linkage goes in. Might be best to put let's see here how this was going. This goes this way. Our pivot pin goes in. Our spring goes on. And we're gonna, there's a special tool for this. Twist this spring up and it goes over here, and our detent goes on right there. So I'm gonna have to figure out how I'm going to do that, because that is one stout spring. Personally, I would not take that out of there. It tells you to, but there's really no reason to. You can get to the lever seal pulling it out with a pocket screwdriver. You just have to take it apart. This is how it comes apart. I think this is going to be a super pain right here. So let me figure out how I'm going to get it in there. It's got a deal that hooks onto here and twists it up into place. Okay, I can tell you, after having done this, I would never take that back off again. The way I got it in there is I got a pair of vice grips on here this way, and I twisted it up enough that I could get it started. It really takes two people, and then you can start knocking this down in there and moving it over. Once you get it started, you can take your vice grips off, and do be careful it doesn't fly out of there on you. But you just get it down in the spot. This one, I believe we're supposed to put it in this year model. I think we're supposed to put it in reverse. I may be wrong. I'll have to go back and look again. To line this up with the linkage that's in the bell housing. So be careful when you're putting that in that you do get that lined up. You don't just bolt it down and bend everything. Tricky part here, looks like my linkage seal came out. Tricky part here is going to be showing the whole back end of this. I don't know how I'm going to do that. There is a washer, goes on our planet. If you want to take these pinion gears apart, be my guest. There's really no need to, unless they're screwed up, and if they're screwed up, you're replacing the whole thing anyway. Take the flat blade screws out, turn this, pins will come out. There's an ID mark on the secondary pinions that are over here. The ID mark faces the rear. This pinion gear faces up. Different output shafts for different years and vehicles. This one here happens to be 14.5 inches. There is a washer. This is our selective shim right here. This is what we're going to be measuring from here to the back of that bell housing like we showed. And the difference there is what we need to come up with shim. I believe it was 5 to 30 thousandths, 31 thousandths, something like that. This is what I'm talking about. It was going to be tricky. I really need this to be in a hole in the table. So I don't know how I'm going to do this because I don't have a camera mount that can reach over there, really. Yeah, let me see what I can do. Okay, we're supposed to tighten the adjuster for the rear band as tight as it will go, back off 2 3/4 turns, and then tighten this nut down. Okay, lip seal, lip faces down. This may rip when we try to stick this back on there because of how old it is. Make sure that the lip is not rolled. Lip facing down on this one. Okay, lube that up. Lube this up. Get your lip seal tool. Just work that around. That went in really easy because of how preformed it already is. Put your spring on, put your retainer on, and if you'll look on your snap ring, some of them are not so easy to see, but there is a taper to your snap ring. You always want the short end of it up. Alright, and you go press this down. I don't have a camera over there. Okay, we got our clutch hub. Drums are different for different years. Hubs are different for different years. Did not find a listing for the bottom plate. Seems to have a dish to it, and the dish was down. And we're going to want to put this in here. Actually, we want to put this in here. The dish down. We'll go ahead and put our hub in here. Come on now. Don't be like this. Where was that? Clutches are different. It's 2 different style clutches. It's 2 different thicknesses of steels that I could tell. I got most of my information from Fatsco. So if you're looking at this on Patreon, the part numbers are going to be there from Fatsco. I'm sure there's other places that sell it, but that's where my information is going to be from. Let's see. Didn't have that quite lined up. See if we can get this turned. There we go. Here we have this plate. The step up or snap ring. Don't put the opening in an opening. And our input shaft, there's different ones for the different years. Sealing ring kit, washer kit seems to all be the same. Bushing kit, they only had one listing. Hook and loop on this. Okay. On our input shaft, this bushing does not seem to matter which direction it goes. There is a stop here for it. It is fairly tight fitting. I had a heck of a time getting it off of there. There we go. Okay. Yeah. Let's get the pump over here, or the bell housing over here, and put our body on that. Okay, this is the best I could do, and it's going to be in my way. But I'll do it, and I'll just have to show the end result. So we're going to put our H gauge on here. Measure from the top of the case down to here, and we can flip this over. We check our end clearance from the bell housing with the gasket on it to the back of our sun gear. Find out the clearance that we need. Pick our proper shim or thrust washer. Thrust washer goes down inside of there. Then our drum's going to go on. Let's see if we can keep from hitting the camera. Put our drum in. I'm going to drop in there. Put our input shaft down. Okay. We have our front band, our strut, our piece that fits on the back here, and our adjustment comes through. That wasn't good. The camera's right in the way. Our other strut, and we're going to go in this way, and then our return spring. Use a spring, a ring compressor from the piston kit again on here. We want this to line up in that strut right there. And we are falling down out the way. Get back up in there. And what we really need to do is put the side cover on right now. So, let me get this down in there, and I'm gonna have to move the camera again. You're not gonna be able to see me put the bell housing on because this is gonna be right in the way. I'm gonna have to set this down on here. Okay, so apparently we weren't recording. So I noticed a couple things were backwards. The struts, these little legs need to face up. This little plate needs to face up. Okay, valve body for this thing. Make sure that this hole right here blows through. This is the modulator valve. Their manual valve. This is a front and rear pump check valve. Goes in right here. This part faces up. This is what do they call this thing? Converter, no. Downshift timing valve. I would not try to take this thing apart like all the other stuff. You're gonna start bending these fingers, they're gonna break. This is a really weird shaped spring in here. The only way that you're gonna get this thing is to buy one. I mean, it's not like you can make one. It goes down inside of here. I'm probably gonna have to take this to the arbor press and press that in real easily. This valve goes with the hollow end out. Make sure we're nice and free. This spring and a retainer comes in from the other side. Probably should have started it first. You don't want to come all the way through. It was sticking up just a little bit. thrust washer with the tab sitting right there. There's a gasket that goes here. I would say glue that into place first because it's going to be easily moved. Probably just use some Permatex gasket sealer on that. The sealing rings are hook and loop. They just hook in like so. Just kind of hold in on one side, kind of push it up and around, and it'll pop into place. Okay, make sure, I think that manual valve may be in backwards. I think it goes in this way. And here's our bolts for all that. Okay. Okay, normally I probably wouldn't do it this way. But I'm going to do it this way this time to show you, because it's just going to add more weight. But I want to be able to show some of this. This is where our filter goes. We have a seal on it. Here's our hold down bracket. There's a piece that goes on the other side that slides onto here. Go ahead and lube this up a little bit. Maybe it'll go back in there. And I don't know that it will. There it went. Just when you think it's not going to go. Flathead bolts that hold that in. Getting to that bottom one may be a little bit fun. It was easier taking it out. Alright, where did you go? See if we can start it with a magnet. Alright, there would be a gasket here. I would Permatex that. Here's our bolts for that, 1/2 inch. There is an O-ring up inside of here for your filler tube. And make sure we get this going the right direction. There'd be another long bolt there. It was missing one. I have to look up the torque specs. Probably around 20 foot-pounds on this, I would imagine. Probably should have left that loose to slide this bracket onto there, but I was able to get it on there. I don't know how well that's going to show up in there. Okay, the housing. Be better to have the bracket on the outside here to keep this from pushing in. Here's our seal. This housing going to bolt onto here, gasket here also. And here's our bolts. I'm gonna go ahead and leave that off right now. It's just a little bit of weight I don't need added to it. Okay. Go ahead and put our linkage in. There'd be a gasket here, and then put the gasket on, put your linkage on, line your valve up. Okay, the longest bolts go to the pump, so we're going to leave those off for the momentary. We got 3 short ones. We got 3 that are like this, one that's like this, that one goes down here. 3 go here. Again, I'll get the torque specs for this. I'm not going to bother to torque it right now. Since it's not being rebuilt, it's going to have to be taken back apart if anybody ever rebuilds the thing. Yeah, make sure we're moving nice and free. On our pump, get some line-up bolts. You got the O-ring. You would want to lube that up really well. There's a word that says top. It goes at the top, obviously. You would want to lube this up. Go ahead and lube up inside of there. And sure that we are going. Where's my word? See if we got enough room to start our bolts. No, not yet. Okay. Go ahead and pull it up evenly. Lever all the way down. Okay. We have our thrust washer that we need to put on there. Make sure the tab is in the slot. We have this valve here. Make sure that clips on there, and that slides into there. And we can slide our drum onto here. We're going to need this for checking our end clearance. When we check our end clearance, we're going to check it from the back end. We're going to use an H gauge, which is this little dude right here. We're going to check the back end, then we're going to flip this over and we're going to put this on here. We're going to be checking at the sun gear right here. We can actually do it this way also. We can check it here, see how this is. Of course it's going to change because we don't have our gasket on here, but we would do it with the gasket on there. We check it right here and we check the back end of it. We'll see what our difference is and we'll know what our end clearance is supposed to be. Okay, this footage here got corrupted and luckily I'm able to get to it easily. Otherwise, it would not get to be on there. When you do this housing right here, take your bolts out, and I made a tool. Tried a couple different ways. And I don't think you really need the tool. There's 7/16 bolts here. It might make it easier. I don't know. Old school people will know what this is. This was a shim for the transmission mount on the old GM transmissions. Bent this side down, bent this at an angle. And this allows you to get on here and capture this little valve right here. You do have to push back a little bit. Oh, come on. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but it does work. That'll allow you to keep that from flying out of there when you take this off. Now they suggest that you have something to hold that, and you just take this. That kind of popped off. Just take a rubber mallet and tap on that. Personally, I just hang on to the stupid thing so it doesn't go anywhere. It is a little stiff. Trying to keep that stupid thing on there while you're doing this. I even tried to make one to go in here and hold it. It's not enough. Okay, here it just came off. It would have been flying out of there just now. Okay, now there is a gasket here, so that would be being replaced if it was being rebuilt. So let me get this disassembled and then we'll assemble it back together. Okay, here it is disassembled, and you might be thinking to yourself right off the bat, I'll just pull this back plate off and leave this valve out and that'll take the pressure off of up here. It won't, and I'll show you why. This valve goes in here with the tip facing backwards. Plate goes on here. There is a gasket. There are flathead screws that go on here. The reason it won't get that valve back where it goes is this little thing right here. This little clip goes in right there, just like that. So that's going to keep the valve from going back any further. So we'll go ahead and put this in, the side facing up. Inner and outer spring. This sleeve, there's this cap, kind of presses in there. Our boost valve goes with the tip back. And our snap ring goes with the short end of the taper up. And our snap ring goes in. Alright, now you gotta be really careful right here, because when you're trying to put this on, it may pop off of the spring and get kind of jammed, and that's what happens. You'll see, I'll talk about it a little bit in the video. Make sure that's sitting down on that spring. Then the spring goes in, and then this piece goes in. Now you're gonna have to hold all this back, and that's where the tool would come in, or you're just gonna have to hold it back while you're trying to go in. And it is a little stout. There we go. Now, be easy putting these in, is you need to check and make sure that that valve is still moving. They suggest you don't move this adjustment here. I did move mine just to see if it was going to come out different or the same, and it came out within 7 thousandths of the way they say to adjust it. Okay. And that's all there is to the low and drive valve body. Your arm goes in here, and seal goes on here. It would be wise to still have the lever that goes on here, because when you try to stick this in, this just shoves back. So it'd be better to have it on right now. Okay, I'm not sure what was going on. I think what happened is when that came out, this moved over and it sits on a spring that's in there, and I think it got kind of caught. Anyway, make sure all this is moving when you get that in there. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take this arm, and see how there's a flat spot where this sits on there. We're going to push this in just until it contacts that surface right there. You don't want to push it in, you just want to contact that surface. Then we're going to screw this in. Probably need a smaller one. We're going to screw this in until it just makes contact with that flat spot. Just made contact. We turn it out one full turn. And you tighten this down. It's a 7/16 nut. You're going to see how close it came to what it was set at. Make sure that we don't turn here. Okay, the setting that it had before was 813 thousandths from the tip to right there, and we're 820, so it was pretty damn close. And that's how you adjust that. There will be a gasket that goes here. There's a gasket that goes on this one also. I don't have the gaskets, obviously, since we're not rebuilding this. And here's our bolts for this cover out here. Okay, you cannot put the cover on without the bell housing being on, because you got this guide that goes in here, and this valve and spring that goes in here on that valve that's in there. Now this should not be poking up, but that's the way it is, because I can't do anything about it. I'm gonna have to figure out how I would do this, because this has got to be compressed in, and the adjustment, your band struts are going to fall off if you don't. I got it all the way, the adjustment all the way tight, pushing the strut up against the case here so it doesn't fall off. The rear servo spring goes in here. Like I said, there'd be a gasket here. We've got all of our bolts here. We would need to put some grease up in that valve that's in this cover to keep it from falling out. This one here. And we're gonna have to compress, like I said, this all in at the same time. The trick is gonna be getting that servo down in there. I gotta figure out how I'm gonna do that. Figure out how I'm going to get this down in there. Maybe that would work. on the cover why it did not want to go in. I had this upside down. This guide goes in. I would put it in the case, but it goes in that way. This piece that the legs are broken off the back, stem faces down, and the spring goes in here. Actually, I think this is upside down. Anyway, that's broken. This would need to be replaced anyway. Spring goes in the back, and the spring goes on here. But like I said, I would put this into the case first. I think maybe not be able to go into the case first because it's spring loaded. Yeah, I think it'd have to go on here first. Just helps you guide it on there, keep everything straight. And then of course the valve goes in the back. Have the valve body over here. The little clip facing out, hollow end out. Okay, nearest I can figure that capsule that sits in there was not sitting in the hole properly. Put your modulator pin in. There'd be a gasket that goes here. Modulator would be getting replaced since it's bent. And it's 7/8 that holds that in. Okay, you're supposed to tighten down the front servo adjustment all the way and back off 3 complete turns. And it's 3/4 on this jam nut. Here's the cover for that. Make sure that your governor is free. You should be able to watch the valve move. Make sure your gear's okay. And then put that in there. There would be a gasket here. And then there's 4 1/2-inch bolts that hold that in. Okay, I think we're gonna have to change camera angles to try to see what we're doing with the rear pump back here. They actually wanted you to put it in back at the beginning before you even put the output shaft in. And I don't see no point in doing that. It just makes it harder to get the output shaft in. I put it in afterwards. And I think these are 12 to 15 foot-pounds right here. Alright, oh, we can put the front cover in. Low and drive body, as they call it. said there would be a gasket there. Longer bolts go in the longer spots, obviously. And shorter bolts go in the shorter ones. You need this off to be able to line your linkage up anyway. And let me tell you, it's a pain. You really need two people to do it, because that bell housing's heavy, and it's not easy to look in there and see where it needs to be and get it, because that valve is going to move around on you. Alright, I gotta find where my last bolt went. There it is. Alright, let me change camera angles, and we'll get to the last part of this thing. See, your linkage is moving in. It's really better to have that outside linkage on here before you put this on there. There may be a setting that you need to have distance-wise, like there is on the linkage back here anyway. Probably is, I would imagine. If there is, I'll put it in the video somewhere. I would just leave enough of a gap that there's no interference when you try to move that. You don't want it sitting out too far, but you don't want it in too close either. Okay, I think we've already talked about the pump. The gear, the outer gear does not have a specific way to go. In fact, I don't think either one does. And the only thing is, you look at this gear, you see why it didn't want to come off when we were disassembling it. It's because the key worked its way into the gear. It should not look like that. This gear is bad. So the pin that holds it in, here's what's left of it, because I had to shear the head off. The head is round, and it's about the size of that slot, just a little bit smaller. On our pump here, this lines up with that. We have two flathead bolts. Hold that together. Yep. Misalign that. Sorry, this going right there. Can't see what I'm doing because I got this up here too high to actually see the holes. Alright, there'd be a gasket behind this. I think it should show up on the output shaft. There should be an O right there. The pin that goes in the output shaft right down there, in that hole that's down there. We have this pin. It's going to go in right here. If you do not put that in there, it will burp fluid out the top. So you put the O at the top. You put the slot of the gear at the top. So it would slide in. The word top is on your pump on here also. I have to get this back here where I can see. Four bolts that hold that in. They're 1/2 inch. Okay, you would want to make sure that that still turns nice and free. Got a snap ring here. Goes on the bottom. Short end of the taper up. As always. There we go. And we have this bearing with this bracket. Okay, we got 3 1/2 inch bolts to hold that bracket in. There we have another snap ring, short end up. There we go. All right. Oh, this thing is killer on the back. Okay. See how well it shows up. You see this area right here? It's where our speedometer gear needs to be driven down to. Just pretty much almost flush down here. There's a lathe cut seal that goes on the back, a rear seal and bushing in here, and that's going to go on there. 9/16 bolts that hold that in place. Only other thing we got to talk about is our linkage seal. Would face this way, and of course it should not slip in there like this one does. Should be tighter fitting than that. We have this spacer. We have our linkage. Let's see. Make sure our splines line up. May have to turn that a little bit to get that where it needs to be. There we go. And 7/16 on the nut and bolt. This allowance right here is 7 to 30 thousandths, I believe it was. So put you something in between. I'd pick 20 thousandths. Tighten that down. Then on our bolt back here, there's the bolt goes through. The lock washer goes on the back side right here. Tighten that down, and we are done with this